This is Curry.
He's doing 360s off the rope! We're down 7-9, man!
He's reached rank 1 NA multiple times, and the question is how. He's a phenomenal aimer, but what sets him apart from the rest is his utility usage. I'm going to break down how he uses utility so that you can learn and rank up fast. You might think you know a thing or two about utility usage, but do you really? I'm going to break down a game when he plays Skye. Most principles still apply to the other roles, but the only thing to keep in mind is that Sentinel and Controller utility is more important for the team than Duelist utility most of the time. So it's important to not die early on these roles. This game is from a stream and is played at around High Immortal 3 ELO on the EU servers. On pistol round, Curry usually prioritizes utility and light shield over buying a pistol. To be honest, this does depend on the agent quite a lot and personal preference, but it is important to understand that utility has more value during pistol rounds. Because everyone starts off with a small amount of money, there usually isn't a lot of utility that is used during pistol rounds. So the enemy can't counter with utility the same way they would in a normal gun round. A quick example would be, say you're playing a normal round and you flash as a Skye on attack. This might cause the enemies to put down a Sage wall. After destroying it, you might flash again, but the enemy Sage counters with slow orbs. This is something that won't really happen during pistol rounds, but because you don't have a ghost or an upgraded pistol, it becomes even more important that you use your utility correctly, if you buy it. So make sure you have a brief idea of how you want to use that utility. Don't buy utility for the sake of buying it on pistol rounds. On most gun rounds, Curry uses his flash to either get space or info. In this case, he calls for his teammate and does both. The reason why this is so good is because in order to get the most value out of your flash as a Skye, you want to put it on cooldown early. This goes for all utility that recharges, like an Omen Smoke. The more utility you're able to use, the more value you're able to extract. Harry flashes outside a B for info and to put the flash on cooldown in order to get more value. The enemies decide to hit A. Curry tries to help his teammate with his dog, but they both die. He then uses his flash during the retake. Afterwards, Curry waits for his teammate and for his third flash. Unfortunately, he dies, but there's a very important lesson to learn here, and this is where Curry uses what I call the full value rule. We all know utility is important, but the struggle for most of us is getting the most amount of value out of it. Part of that equation is just practice, sticking to the agent and learning when, where and how to use utility, but that's only half of the equation. The other half involves just using more utility. Allow me to explain. Let's say the perfect use of utility would yield a value of 100, whilst the worst scenario is negative 100. Not using anything therefore leads to a value of 0. When learning an agent, you might land in the negative or neutral zone a lot, but once you get comfortable, it's pretty easy to at least get a little bit of value. The big problem here is that most people die with a lot of utility left, giving them 0 value. What Curry does is he uses most of his utility before dying consistently. Of course, there's some utility you can't just use every single round, like Skye Heal. That's very situational and you use it whenever you can. But as a Skye, you should never die with one of your flashes. Same goes for other flashes, smokes and heals. So by just using more utility, you naturally get more value. Also, the more you use your utility, the better you'll become at gaining more value out of them. Don't look for the perfect 5-man flash or the incredible 5-man grenade. It's not gonna happen. Get what value you can from your utility before dying. Here are some quick examples of how much utility he uses. Another extremely important thing to do in order to get more value from utility is to communicate, which Curry does a lot.
Open cheater, Omen, open cheater.
One of the strongest pieces of utility on every character is the ultimate, and there's a way to get your ultimate more often, called ultimate orbs. Take as many as you can, and that too will help you get more value by increasing the amount of ultimates you're able to put out. Something he also does is help create space for his team with his utility. This early flash on attack is more important than you think. Both teams start with their own space, but in between there's neutral space for both teams to fight over. This neutral space is extremely important to win more rounds. Think of it like this: the more space you have, the more options you have. More options mean better options, which most of the time leads to an advantage. So try to create as much space as possible with your utility. The reason why utility usage is so important is because our aim will always be somewhat inconsistent because we're human. But we can increase our consistency by relying on good utility instead of good aim.